Well, this is really fun, Jim, because Tara. Speaking of Tara, the turtle, who just joined us, she likes to creep on people up into their slide into people's DMs, and she's really been following a lot of gamers and streamers and influencers, kind of that we end up having on the show. But we always want more comedians. We always want to lighten the mood and the load around here, and she found this great comedian who I hadn't heard of yet, but now I will never forget him, and I don't think you will either after we talked to him today. Really excited to talk to him. He's, Jim, an award-winning ham, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean as the biggest compliment ever. Raymond Montoya is his name. He's a hilarious stand-up comedian. He's an actor. He's a producer. And he's been charming crowds, listen, Jim, since he was 7 years old when he won actual awards, not just like his mom and dad being like, you're real funny. He won actual awards for being the biggest scene stealer in the room, okay? He's performed everywhere from the Comedy Store. He's on TV. He's had appearances on Jay Leno, Craig Ferguson. He's also the brains behind Comedy Juice, one of the biggest live comedy brands out there. He also apparently moonlights, Jim, you'll like this, as a Dungeons and Dragons nerd. And
it was my gravitational pull, by the way. And by the way, I
know.
think comedians make great dungeon masters, by the way. But go on, please. Go on.
Well, and he's a podcast host, which of course makes me love him more. Please welcome the man who's got more side hustles than Jimmy Mack has squirrels in his brain. Ladies and gentlemen, Raymond Montoya. Good morning, friend.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
We're good. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, that was a great intro. I don't think I'm going to live up to it. I don't know if you know, but comedians wake up about 13 minutes ago. So all of that was a lot for the last 13 minutes that I've been awake. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's a lot. And if you want to hang up now and just let the interview in there, we would understand.
I know, right? Honestly, I should go out on a high note, as we like to say in the business. We get our laugh, and then we go home. And I think that's where I'm going to end right there.
That would be an interesting, it's like leave the people wanting more. I never even come out on stage. It's like a whole bit.
Say my name, and I give a wave, and I can go home, and that's about it.
By the way, that actually Andy Kaufman would do stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
He'd get introduced, and then they have a spotlight up there for like 5 minutes. Really quickly, before we actually get to some questions here, Raymond, there is a really funny Flip Wilson routine about being on too long, Lindsay, that is one of my favorites of all time, where in the back of his brain he loses the audience, and he goes, a little voice in the back of my head said, "You've been on too long." So I realized I had to wrap it up, and so 45 minutes later, I finished my set. And he actually gets jumped in the parking lot by the entire audience after the show. And one of the things I wanted to ask you in regards to this, because we are now in an era in regards to both comedy and in regards to content and information where we're working in bits. The word bit, which of course means something else to comedians and people who practice comedy, has now become something else these days. The idea that everything, whether it's TikTok or whether it's YouTube, live streaming, everything is kind of kernelized into bits. And I'm wondering if that's had a positive effect on comedy overall. The idea that since people are told get in and get out, if not increase the quality of comedy, because that's a subjective thing, if it has actually encouraged people, get off the damn stage and stop being on so long. Am I making sense?
That makes sense. It makes total sense. And I think everybody's answer is going to be different, in my opinion. I mean, like you already said, comedy is so subjective. So some people love it. Some people think, that everything is a good thing, and it is helping people realize, okay, I'm being self-aware about things that are working and not working on stage. But in my opinion, everything is being a bit makes things much worse for comedy, because at least myself, I'm a storyteller comedian. So someone tells me in a bar, hey, tell me a joke. I go, you got 5 minutes? Because that's how long my joke is. Because I'm going to walk you through this whole story. And people's attention spans are so low now because of TikTok and because of everybody thinking every little thing is so funny that it's not great for a lot of comics, because we're like, no. Comedy is taking you on a journey, not this 6-second TikTok that's going to make you laugh and then you can scroll away from it,
Well, I mean, and speaking of being a story, I mean, I hear that people want to get in, get out, but someone like you who tells stories and has been doing it since you were very little. So here's what. Okay, we're going to go vulnerable here. Can you put on your smoking jacket and go deep and dark with me for a minute?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll light up the cigar at 8:06 in the morning. Let's do it.
Perfect. Thank you. So, I had this sort of epiphany, not sort of, massive epiphany last night, putting my daughter to bed. And I was like hit with the idea of why do I open myself up more to people I don't know more than people I do know? I don't know where it came from. And then so listen, Raymond, I went and talked to ChatGPT because she is my,
Smart.
yeah, is my therapist and my spiritual advisor. And what I came to realize it comes from childhood. So I'm going to bring this back to you. It comes from childhood, and that when we are creatives and entertainers, and maybe people around us get a glimpse of that, and then it becomes that's kind of how we feel seen and loved, and then we realize we're forcing that the rest of our life. So it was much deeper conversation, but I really had to do some inner child work and hold myself last night. But do you, since you have been doing this since you were 7 years old, do you have it like an earliest memory of that? And when you look back, were you sort of, I don't want to say forced into comedy, but was it like, do you have that feeling of like, that's how I'm seen, and now I have to do this or I will die, at risk of sounding dramatic?
No, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. I mean, I kind of heard two questions in there. You know, do I have an earliest memory of just doing all of this? Yeah, I mean, I started acting when I was 7. My sister was a stage actress, and still is an amazing singer. And I started doing it, and it's funny because I started doing straight plays, and I hated it. I was so bored. I was doing my lines, and I was like, nobody cares about anything I'm saying. And then I was at my earliest memory, I was actually doing Scrooge, and I was the turkey boy that at the very end of the movie when he finally comes around. Spoilers if you haven't seen it.
What day is this,
finally,
I'm sorry.
Exactly. And he gives you, and so what I'm supposed to do is go and get this big fake stuffed turkey and bring it on stage, and it gets a laugh. But I was like, well, it gets a little laugh. I want a bigger laugh, and so I had taken a boa that I found, and I ripped all of the feathers off, and I put it all over my costume, and I put it in my mouth, and I put it in my hair, and like I had plucked the turkey myself. And I walked out on stage, and it just uproarious laugh, and I was like, that's
Brilliant.
the feeling that I want to chase. I want that. So, but I continued to do plays because I was just so young. I didn't have the choice. I continued to do straight plays until all the way throughout high school. And then once I hit my like 17, when I started doing actual just stand-up comedy, that's when I realized like, okay, I just want to do comedy. I just want to do this. This is all I want to. I don't want to act. I don't want to do other things. And then, as you're saying, as I started doing stand-up, I really just became. I mean, I was always the funny guy in school. You know, everybody knew that, blah blah blah. But yeah, like when I started doing stand-up, and then I started leaving school, and I met new people, they were always like, "Oh yeah, you're the clown. Essentially, you're the glorified clown. That's all you are. Now dance, monkey." That's kind of like how it was. And then it wasn't even until I did that, I did feel like that, like how you're saying, where it's like. We as a comic, we call it going on and off. That's kind of how we say it in the industry. And so
Okay.
a lot of times when we're in the green room or when we're with other comics, it's nice because we can be off and we can just hang out and we don't have to be on and talking to people. Because even when you're in public, if someone knows you're a comic, they expect you to be on, because then when you're not, they're like, "Are you sad?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just not on right now. You know, I'm just not doing the thing." And so there is a big line, and I had to learn it probably about 6 or 7 years into stand-up, where I'm like, there's a stage Raymond, and then there's an off Raymond, and those two worlds don't mix very often. And it's always, I guess, it's always a funny train. My wife always tells me, she goes, "It's so funny to see you drive home, like from a show, because you're like so pumped and you're so energized, and then you get really hungry and tired." And like that's the transition from being on Raymond to being off Raymond. And it's hard to manage, but eventually
It's like being
as a comic,
stoned.
you do get there.
It's like
Yeah,
being
seriously,
stoned.
yeah. I wouldn't know, but yeah.
Same.
Absolutely.
Nicely done, by the way. There really is a connection to trucking here. And by the way, as radio personalities, Lindsay and I cannot relate to a single thing you were saying about actually having a persona in one place and a persona in the other, and having them both be real. By the way, that's the other thing too that people don't talk about. I don't want people for a second to think that what they're seeing on stage isn't Raymond. It is Raymond.
Right.
What happens in the green room is Raymond. But it's often people don't understand that since you are your profession, person. Literally, it's important to remember that too, because that is how people avoid burnout a lot of the time. There's a trucking connection here in the sense that the men and the women in the cab, as they make their way down the road, have to literally become somebody else when they get home because they can't carry that into their personal lives. And the same kind of thing applies here. I kind of wanted to ask you my favorite question. Lindsay knows this is one of my favorite questions. When I ask you to name me 2 to 3 comedians, it really where you think about them and they're always on stage with you and they've made their way into who you are. Who do you gravitate towards?
That's a tough one. Only because I've been doing this for 15 years, so there's so many comedians. And it's funny when I do answer this question, because I do get this question. In the answer isn't necessarily, active working comedians. So you said like people that are on stage with me, but number one that really encompasses like how I do my stand up is Bert Kreischer. He's a great comic. He does storytelling. His story, I mean, I got 5 to 7 minute stories. He's blowing that out of the water. He's doing 10, 15 minute stories with, weaves and turns and callbacks and ups and downs. And his stories are, the way he is a storyteller is absolutely amazing. So I do love Bert Kreischer. There's a very specific comedy special that when I saw it, I was like, this is how I want to do stand up. And he's still doing a little bit of stand up. His name's Hannibal Buress. He's an actor now.
His stand-up comedy, by the way, and by the way, you got the spirit of the question. I don't, like I said, people that you're working with these days. I mean, the idea of going back and who are you conducting your seance for? The idea that who the spirit of, as opposed to the jokes of. The spirit of Hannibal Buress. Have you seen him? You've seen him, Lindsay, right? You've seen his stand-up routine.
I don't think so.
Oh my God!
Live from Chicago is that. I was already doing stand-up, but I like reconfirmed it for me, like. Oh my God, this is stand-up comedy. It's such a good special. I don't even know what year it was from, but Hannibal Buress Live from Chicago is one of the best specials I've ever seen.
Writing it down now. Got it. I have plans tonight now.
Absolutely.
Friday night just got lit.
By the way, Raymond and I are now in the same. I couldn't believe it. The thing is, the permission slip in that stand-up routine. You're like, oh wait, you can do it like this. There's what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
There's a sense of, oh wait, some of the thoughts that I actually had about how stand-up could possibly go, this guy's doing it, and you don't feel bad that he got there. You're like, oh my God, I can do some of the stuff that I want to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh yeah, it changed. He had a whole voiceover like that happened during the show, and you're like, wait, you can just play audio tracks? Like we can do this now? Okay, cool. And like it was so good. And then one last one, the silliness. I that's half of stand up. A lot of people take stand up. This is the art. This is the craft. This is and yes, that is true. But also, we are clowns. We are silly. That's the whole point. Is we wanted to have fun when we started doing this, and a lot of people lose that. But somebody who has it, his name is Rory Scovel.
He's so great.
He is oh my God, he is so great. And you watch his special and you're like, he's just, him and Pete Holmes very closely tied together, where you're like, because Pete takes on a very lighthearted style and Rory just takes his craziness and just says, no, this is real. But both of those influence my silliness of being like, whatever I'm writing, make sure to make it silly, because that's the whole point. That's the whole point of this, is to make it fun. Make it fun for the people in the audience. Want to have a good time. They don't want to just laugh. They also want to have a good time. And the more joy that comes from how crazy I can get. I mean, it is early, but I'm losing my voice a little bit because I've had a couple shows in the last few days, and I am loud on stage, and I scream and I yell in a good way, and I laugh, so it's like making it a whole production is what is fun for me. And so those two guys really do make it a production.
Well, and it could sound to other people to be like, when you say, I want to remember to keep it silly, some other people might be, well, no shit, like you're a comedian. But it's not the case. Like that being a real party line for you, it's got to be something that you're like, have to consciously be like, no, I am a silly person. That's where I'm authentic. That's where I connect. And so it's something to truly remember. So I don't think that just goes without saying that comedians are silly. Some are very disgruntled, rough and tough, and that's their thing. Like, so I think we need more of the lighthearted silly. So thank you for that, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
And then to pivot, I want to talk a little bit about pivot, because I like to say a lot. I'm a songwriter and a performer, and I like to say a lot that my idea of success is when my dad stopped asking what my backup plan was. And that's when I was
Yep.
like, okay, I've made it. And you've played the Improv, the Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, and do you live in California, in LA?
Orange County.
Yes, I do. Southern California, Orange
Okay,
County.
cool.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here very early. So, but the idea of that, like to you, because there's household names, and then there's actual working people, and obviously everybody, everyone is striving to become the whoever the Jerry Seinfeld of comedy or whatever. But and you're very well known, but you're also like you're a working comedian, and you found all these different other avenues to play into it, from the the podcasting, all the different things. So do you have I guess the question is, do you have a highlight so far of your career? And then on top of that, what is the highlight that when you'll be like, okay, that's the thing when of course, whatever that thing happens, you'll want more. But what are the two things, like so far, what's been your highlight, and what is the next kind of goal?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny, you mentioned what's the backup plan. I mean, luckily my parents, shout out to my parents who are probably listening right now. They have always been like, hey, if this is what you want to do, this is what you got to do. Just know you're going to have to work double extra hard because you're still going to need money. And so, but they never discouraged that from us. Me and my sister too. She was an actress all through college, and she did professional plays and stuff, and then became a singing teacher, became a teacher, all this stuff. So, and for both of us all the time, they were just like, hey, you do your thing. You'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We're not worried about you guys. So shout out to them. Awesome. That was great. I mean, the highlight so far of my career, and a big moment in my career, not the highlight, but a big moment in my career was when I realized, like, I don't actually necessarily care about being the next biggest name in stand-up comedy, because that sounds exhausting. Like, I look at these guys, and they're on the road 50 weeks out of the year. And I'm like, man, I've got a wife and a kid at home, and I don't want to be gone that much. Like, I love stand-up, and I'll always do it. And I do travel, and I do the road. And I would say I'm on the road, or I'm traveling, one or maybe 2 weeks out of the year, and then, out of the month. And then the other weeks I'm home doing local shows and producing shows and all that kind of stuff. So once I realized, hey, I don't want to be gone away all the time, that made things a lot easier and a lot. I became a lot happier once that happened.
That's awesome.
And so one of the highlights of my career so far, I mean, I've done shows with everyone everywhere. I mean, a lot of people always ask, what's the biggest show you've ever done? I was fortunate enough to open for Joe Rogan at the Irvine Improv, which is 600 seats. Which was phenomenal. That was an awesome show. And then also I got to go back, not with Joe, but with Alfred Robles and a couple of my friend comedians. It was the day after Christmas. It was the 26th for the Irvine Improv. That was sold out as well. So another 650 seats, which was crazy. I mean, doing it for that many people and hearing the wave of laughter, you don't forget that. Which is so that those are some of the big, obviously the big rooms, but also big rooms can be awful if it's not going well. The silence is deafening. So I mean, those obviously are big moments in just my performing career.
Those are from like a visibility. Those are like a visibility, but you probably have ones where you're like, this meant something to me and me alone, probably, right?
I'll never. Some of the best. I did a show up in Oregon, where was that show? Near Bend, Oregon, and it was this little tiny theater. It was a Friday night, and we sold a couple tickets. It was I mean, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, something like that, something small, and that. I'll never forget that show. People bought my merch. People came up we took pictures, and I was like, do any of you know who I am? And they're like, we do now. And it was like, oh, you guys are incredible. I love it. So little things like that also stick out. There's too many to count, but it's not about the size of the crowd. It's about how much fun they have, and how, a lot of times after a show, someone will go, hey, it's a good show, and they walk away. But at the end of shows, people will come up to me and talk to me, and sort of, it's funny, we were talking about it. They try to see the off Raymond, and I can recognize it, and I give them a little bit of it. We have a nice, genuine conversation, and those ones are always like, they remind me why I do this, and I'm like, okay, this is fun. This is why I like it. So
awesome.
Definitely some of those are like the highlights, and then something that I'm looking forward to. I mean, there's always bigger stages. I mean, I think I got a little taste recently. We will either get into this or we won't have time, which is totally fine. But the company that I now own, we have 2 shows in New York that I have a team out there that runs those shows. But I go out there every so often, and I just started to like do some shows in New York more frequently. When I was younger, I would go out and I would do shows out there, smaller rooms and all this stuff. Last time I was out there, I got to do some of the bigger clubs, and I was like, "Ooh, this is a different beast than California is. It's still stand up, but it's 2 very different markets, 2 very different types of stand up." And so doing some more New York stages. I mean, I think if I could get to the Comedy Cellar one day, I would be like, all right, this is because the Comedy Cellar is it's no Comedy Store. Comedy Store you can do well enough and you can get on. The Comedy Cellar, it's like, you know, a staple in comedy history, and you need to work to get on that stage. So that would be awesome.
I actually was going to ask you a question about regional performing, but you touched on it enough to kind of satisfy my itch there. I wanted to ask you about your own style of comedy too, because you talk about the idea of the long form and you talk about the idea of the silence in a 600, seat arena. The idea of what that's like. The kind of comedy you do, if you're looking at somebody like Henny Youngman, Rodney Dangerfield, Stephen Wright, even Mitch Hedberg, what you're looking at there is, if that one didn't work, don't worry, the next one will kill. And this kind of rapid fire movement through time and space. The kind of comedy that you do and the kind of comedy that you like often requires a little bit of silence. And so you've almost got to have the courage to keep going until the laugh that awaits. That's like, for me, the ultimate act of courage for a comedian. To actually,
it gives me such anxiety and diarrhea thinking about that.
but there is a trick, by the way, Raymond, one that I actually know. I don't do what you do. I'm not going to claim to be a stand-up comedian, but I do work in long form from time to time, where you actually have to be able to read an audience and say, it's okay, slow down. They're not laughing, but they're with you. You just got to make sure you stick the landing on that. What are the butterflies like? And by the way, I think that's gasoline. I don't think that it's actually stopping you.
Or just gas.
What is it like to make the decision to do that style of comedy and to understand you have to wait for it as well too?
Yeah, I think the thing that I learned at a very young age was you got to be comfortable in silence, especially with storytelling, because like you said, it's required. And now that I'm doing it long enough, I use the silence. I use my face. I'll open my eyes wider, or I'll move my head, and I'll make the silence less deafening, with some sort of, silly thing. And maybe they won't laugh, but they'll understand, hey, something's coming, give it a sec.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I'll use. And then yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people tend to forget, which, not saying you have, but just in general, like, this is also a job where we have the ability to practice before we get up and do something in front of a big audience. So, I mean, I have 2 new jokes that I'm working on currently, and I did them last night at a smaller show. And that's the place that we get all the bugs out. And, if it is silent, I go, it's okay. These people are friends. They come to this show every week, and they don't mind if this joke doesn't do as well, which is the joke's bombed, or they don't bomb, or whatever it's called, however it goes. But you work out the kinks beforehand so that you get to a point, and this happens constantly with all comics, where you go to a show and you genuinely go, man, that audience sucked. Like, because I know these jokes are good.
Do you tell them?
These jokes.
Do you tell the audience when they suck? Okay, good.
So what I like to do is, if I'm coming on last or whatever it is, I go, hey, I don't care what everybody else has said in the back. You guys are great. It's a little bit of honesty and a little bit of me jesting, but it is a little bit of honesty.
That's so great.
Yeah, but we work through stuff, and we work through these jokes that we write, and like, new jokes and all this kind of stuff, and then when we do hit these big stages, we go, I know this joke works. I've done this joke 30 times in front of other crowds, and you guys don't like it, and that's okay. And so in my mind, I'm going, just sometimes if I'm being evil, I go, make them sit in this joke longer. If they're not liking it, I'm going to give more of the joke to you.
Okay, I love it.
Or I just go, we'll get through this, and we'll move on to the next one. And then we call them tried and trues. If something doesn't go well and it's a newer joke, throw in a tried and true, and I'd be shocked if that one didn't work, because it's been working for the last 3 or 4 years.
Dude, I'd be the worst comedian because I would tell the joke, and if they didn't laugh, I'll be like, "Let me try it again. Maybe you didn't hear me." Like no, that's not. That's not what we're going for.
That actually could work, though. That's an approach that could work, where you actually retell the joke in an attempt to help the audience get it. And
this time, I'm gonna do it topless. Maybe that'll work. We'll see. We're talking. We're talking with Raymond Montoya. You can go to Raymond Montoya, Montoya comedy.com. We're almost out of time, but you said you're married and you have a child at home. Are you on at home, or is your wife like rolling her eyes at you? Do you do comedy at home? Do you try things out on your wife, or is that your safe kind of quiet space at home? Or yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny. There's a classic meme that I always reference, and what it says is, it goes, "Oh my God, he's a comedian." It's a girl, and "Oh my God, he's a comedian. He's so funny. I love it." And then it cuts to 6 years later, and it goes, "Everything's a joke to you."
You knew what you were getting into, yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's funny because obviously a lot of my material is about my wife and my kid, and that's a lot of my stuff is about my home life. But my wife, who is currently sleeping, so she's not listening, but she'll listen to this later. She is very, very amazing and great at recognizing, because she can see it when I'm on and when I'm off. And if I have an idea, or I'm writing a joke currently, or whatever it is, she can see, and she's going, "Tell me about it. Like, tell me the joke. Just say it how you think you're saying it, blah, blah, blah." And then she notices when I'm off, and that's when I'm playing video games. And that's how Tara found me. And I'm decompressing and stuff like that. And she's very good at being like, "I'll talk to you in 10 or 15 minutes." You know what I mean? Like the first couple of years were a little rocky, because she was like, "You're always great." And I'm like, I need a little bit of time to myself just to decompress. And so it's 50-50, definitely. It's a lot of like, "Hey, I'm on, and let's write and let's do this stuff." And then it's a lot of like, "Okay, I'm taking some time. I'll come to you when I'm ready." And so yeah, it's a good mix.
Takes a good partner to be married to a comedian. So it sounds like you've got a good mix. So that's amazing. Raymond Montoya comedy.com, Jim. We got to go see a show of his, Jim.
Yeah, and by the way, when I get out back to California to see my wife eventually, I'd like to preserve that institution as well too. We'll drop in and come see you, or when you get to New York.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raymond, so much, man.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Raymond Montoya comedy.com.